shop, or WhatsApp us and we'll prepare it, ready for your arrival.
Whether you need prescription or over-the-counter medications, blood glucose testing, or advice on vitamins and supplements, we're here early in the morning to late at night. Both of our locations at our Camana Bay and airport stores are open 6:30 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday to Saturday.
For more info, visit fosters.ky/pharmacy. Foster's Pharmacy. Better health because we care.
From Radio Cayman Studio, this is
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community.
Money Sense is brought to you by the Chamber Pension Plan. For further information, visit
the Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. Are you aware of the performance of your pension plan? The Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan provides quarterly fund fact sheets for our members to stay informed with the plan's performance. For the year ended August 31st, various life cycle funds provided returns between 9.2% and 16.5%, and our all-in expense ratio is currently the lowest it's ever been, a record low at 0.72%. Visit chamberpension.ky to review our fund fact sheets. You can see the performance as far back as 10 years. Remember that pensions are a longer-term investment strategy. Focus on the long term rather than the short-term returns. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan continues to perform for you.
from Radio Cayman Studio, this is
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community.
Good morning and welcome to Radio Cayman. This morning, it's a wonderful morning in the Cayman Islands, and we have a combination of Money Sense, and Money Sense has actually teamed up with the Business Buzz, so we're bringing you a brighter, broader, and better program this morning. I want to say thank you to our producer, Miss Susan Watson. She's at home, and Susan's been working behind the scenes, getting things ready for both Money Sense and Business Buzz this morning. In the studio, I'm joined by the esteemed Mr. O.C. Connor. O.C., good morning. And
good morning,
He's,
Anita.
of course, our for the record, talk show host. And in the studio as well, we have more greatness, Mr. Simon Caudry. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning. Greatness, that's too strong a term. I'm okay with OC being called esteemed, but greatness is too much for me.
Simon is the host of Money Sense, and of course Anita Can, host of the Business Buzz, and it's a pleasure to be among you guys this morning.
You too.
This is a first for me, so it's a very much a learning experience. We're not all wide-eyed and bushy-tailed this morning. It's been a late night for
OC
especially OC. OC did a good job last night.
Yes.
And most of
Thank you.
The majority of Radio Cayman staff, we were out on the field. I was between Northside, Buntong, Savannah, Newlands, just about doing the Eastern District. So it's a good morning. And we want to say congratulations to all the winners of the 2021 general elections.
Well, all the candidates, maybe.
And the candidates.
I think everyone who took part, it's good for democracy that people took part, right?
Yeah, well, we still want to say congratulations and well done to those who were unsuccessful.
Yeah. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to put yourself forward
and money
as a candidate. You know, you hear a lot of people criticize them and say things, but it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, you get a lot of abuse from people like us. You get a lot of abuse from other people.
Yes,
and it's not easy putting yourself through that sort of rigmarole. And some of these people deserve it, some of them don't, but they get it anyway.
Yes.
Well, thanks for having me this morning, both of you.
Thank you for making our life easy, because when I sit here while you're hosting, this is easy for us.
Well, it's easy for me. I get to ask the questions and you answer, right? Takes me out of the equation.
Well, you get to ask the questions, whether we answer them.
I want to say good morning also to DJ Lynn, manning the board, the camera, the door, the phones, just about everything. Thank you, Lynn. Now, Money Sense. Normally we talk money, basically. Well, this morning we're going to combine money and politics.
Yep.
and see what we come up with.
They're inseparable.
No doubt.
With enough money, you can get elected. Is that what you're saying?
So let's jump right into this, and let me direct this to Simon, because this is this first half an hour is your show. So we'll give Money Sense its due, right? Now, money and election, they go hand in hand. Now, with this election here in the Cayman Islands, how does elections impact the financial markets? And we're speaking of the Cayman Islands in particular.
I absolutely, and I'll definitely answer that question, but I think in order to answer that question sensibly, one has to sort of take a step back and answer it broadly, because those are important distinctions. So generally speaking, if you look at, say, the US had an election fairly recently, and in the US or the UK or France, Germany, Canada, politicians set policy, and what they get elected to do is to set policy, and that policy that they set is impactful from an economics perspective, because they control their own destiny. So when Biden gets elected, he can do a $3 trillion or a $2 trillion or a $1 trillion spending plan. He can influence international policy. He can set rules that are adopted by global organizations and that are required internationally. So he's talking, for instance, about a minimum rate of corporation tax globally. So those are policies that can be set by influential countries. Unfortunately, when we come to somewhere like Cayman, we don't set policy for ourselves in that sort of macro sense. So we set policy on a micro sense. We set policy with respect to building roads. We set policy with respect to schools or things like that. But we can't and we don't set policy with respect to macro factors. So we have no influence over rules that guide us. And let me give an example of that. We hear often about the frustration that the financial sector has, and I'm from the financial sector, with respect to rules that are imposed by the OECD in terms of trying to reduce Cayman's competitiveness, because we have a zero tax regime, and that seemed to be as anti-competitive to the French or the Germans who have high tax regimes. Well, they set policy that has harmed Cayman's approach, and they've done that despite any efforts, whether good or bad, of politicians. So Cayman's politicians have had zero impact in the last 10, 15 years on global policy as it relates to Cayman. And in reality, anyone who stands or stood or who wins or who forms a government in Cayman as a result of these elections is going to be placed in precisely the same situation, whereby they will have close to zero influence on policy that affects Cayman from a macro perspective. So we don't control our own currency. We don't really control our own fiscal policy. We can spend some money, but it's only spending in a domestic environment. We can't control what happens to our financial sector. There's so many things that are outside of our control that actually these elections, from that perspective, from a macro perspective as to the health of our economy, when so much of it is financial services related, has very little impact. Now, that's not to say that these won't have meaningful implications for our economy, because as a result of these elections, there may be policy changes in terms of opening up or not opening up the economy, in terms of tourism and such like. So those will have meaningful impacts. But from a macro perspective, in terms of the winds that are affecting Cayman, we can't do anything about that. It would be rather like saying we can change the weather. We can't. That's the reality of the Cayman Islands situation.
Your thoughts on this, Osi?
Yeah, well, so for instance, if we had a candidate or a group of candidates or a party who were campaigning on the grounds that we're going to fight the OECD, we're going to fight some of these restrictions that are placed on us, we're going to fight to level the playing field when it comes to international financial services and everything, you don't believe that would have an impact, that the people in Brussels, the people in Paris would listen to that and say, here's the Cayman Islands, a huge player in the financial market, and we have a possible government that is going to try to take us on.
Well, I guess there's the simple answer, no. But let me give some nuance to that, because I think that's important. It would be rather like the parable of David and Goliath. At least David in that scenario had a slingshot. in this scenario, Cayman, as David, has had its arms removed, had its legs removed, and then it's been tied down. So how do you fight the Goliath? You can't do anything about it. There is this Goliath which is going to do whatever it wants. And an example of this, so I interviewed Tony Travers about a month and a half ago on this show, and we talked about this, and he made the observation, which is a factual observation, not an opinion. He's got a lot of opinions, but here's a factual observation, which is the EU has publicly said that they simply do not like zero tax jurisdictions. So it doesn't matter what we pretend we're going to do, what we say we'd like to do, how combative we are, how compassionate we are, how many hugs and kisses we give each people, whether we go over there and have a nice glass of wine with people. It doesn't really matter, because emotionally and philosophically they simply do not like what we stand for as an island.
But have we really challenged them? We have been more compliant than challenging?
I think we have been, you're right, because the perspective has been that if we're not, then the implications could be horrendous. But we're on a grey list at the moment, and we're on a grey list despite being compliant. So what do you do to change that? We've been supplicant towards them, and yet we're on this grey list and on a naughty step. So if we'd been combative towards them, is the hypothesis that our great strength and our great moral suasion would have persuaded the Germans, the French, and the Dutch that actually zero tax jurisdictions are a force for good in the world? This is not the environment we're living in today. There's an increasing proliferation of anxiety about the lack of government cash that governments have, because partly driven by pandemic-related spending. So you've got governments all around the world that have borrowed so much money and are desperately now trying to figure out how the heck they pay that all back. And there's easy targets. We look like easy pickings. Yeah. There was an article in The Economist just last week, I think it was. Well, I'm a couple of weeks behind on my reading on that, so I think it was last week, but it could have been 3 weeks ago. A headline article basically saying, and I paraphrase here, so I don't want to get sued by the editors of The Economist, but I paraphrase to say that all the money that has been spent on global compliance, AML, KYC, which has cost this industry in Cayman millions and millions of dollars of wasted money, completely wasted money, because it's achieved nothing. They said it's had zero impact, or close to zero impact, on stopping terrorists and money launderers moving money. What the heck are we doing then? If a respected organisation has assessed the scene and says everything that the OECD has says you must do in terms of know your customer, know this, do this, have the passport copies of this, it's basically been a complete and utter waste of money. How do you fight that battle? People believe something that just isn't true, and it's very difficult to change a belief system. That's the problem. We're not in a rational system here, we're in a belief system.
But some would argue, and I'll be the devil's advocate, we've tried everything else. We've tried compliance and everything else. Then maybe we should play hardball. We can always retreat at the end of the day if that doesn't work either.
Well, I think that's an interesting perspective. So certainly, if all else fails, try the other option, right? Normally the solution is, I think, there's an expression, Occam's razor. You normally try the thing that's the obvious, and that normally is the easiest path to a solution. I guess you're right. We have, without doubt, in the last, I don't know whether it's 10 or 15 years, and I don't want to pick on any particular government, so I'm saying in a broad stretch of time, we've made zero effort to influence policy in this regard. We say very loudly that we as an island have tried to do these things, but when you look at laws that have been introduced, the private sector has had zero influence on those laws. The government says they've gone out to consultation 48 hours before they're published. That's so pointless. So we've had no discussions with the private sector as to what's sensible. There's been no engagement with regulators around the world in terms of what's the problem we're actually trying to solve and what's a good way of solving it. But I don't know that Cayman's tiny little voice is loud enough. Now, if the argument is, well, why don't groups of countries that are like-minded get together and try and have a louder, stronger, broader voice? So that could be the Caribbean islands. It could be somewhere like the US potentially, which has different rules and regulations. Although obviously the Democrat administration is slightly less keen on low taxation than others. But there are jurisdictions, Ireland's another one, you've got Switzerland, there are Singapore, Hong Kong, there are jurisdictions around the world that have different approaches, different philosophical and moral approaches to things. Now, could that be an avenue to try and progress down in terms of negotiating? Sure. I don't think we've even opened an office in the EU. We've never engaged with the EU about these conversations. So you're right. That is something that could be tried, but I I suspect, and I don't want to be the voice of doom and gloom on a, whatever, Wednesday morning, Thursday morning,
Thursday morning.
What day it is.
Post-election period.
But the reality is, yes, you're right. Maybe that needs to be tried. Maybe it does, because all else has unambiguously and undoubtedly failed. So why not try something different? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have another question for you, Simon. If Cayman Inc. was traded on the stock markets throughout the world, what would be our position after the elections last night? We know that uncertainty in a country can also mean uncertainty in the stock market. Where would Cayman rate if it were traded on the stock market now after a successful election, peaceful elections, some air of certainty as to what kind of government we're likely to get, even though, we're not 100% sure of that yet? What's your view on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and something I've been mulling on for a few days about this in preparation for this show. And so I'm glad you asked it without provocation.
I'm asking it.
It's psychic over here, as I see. But I think what's worth bearing in mind is, once upon a time, going back into, say, the 1970s around the world, changes in government were often from one extreme to another. So there were quite wide varieties in opinions that were in governments. And so you saw, for instance, the Reagan administration in the US, which was quite different to the administration that preceded it in terms of policy. You look at the Biden administration policy compared to the Trump administration or compared to the Bush administration, policy-wise, from an economics perspective, it's really not that different. I mean, they're talking, okay, Biden wants to spend $2 trillion, the Republicans would like to spend $1 trillion. We're still talking about a heck of a lot of money. So the policy differences are actually have narrowed over time. And there's also been a reduction in the ability of politicians to influence economic policy, because we now have independent central banks which stop politicians doing the things that they are prone to want to do to get re-elected, which is to spend people's money and to buy off votes, in other words, by reckless and excitable spending patterns. So in that sense, the ability of governmental changes to rock financial markets has become more limited over time. And so in Cayman's scenario, I go back to something I said at the beginning, I think, which was we don't control our own currency, so we don't control our monetary policy. We do control to an extent our fiscal policy, but of course we have limits imposed upon us by the UK in terms of prudent spending. So we have very limited ability to do something completely crazy. Now, that's not to say we couldn't. And so in actual fact, I suspect markets would kind of have shrugged off this election as being nothing's really fundamentally going to change from an economics perspective, and it would have been a touch more ennui than actual excitement about the implications. But I say that not just about Cayman, that's sort of been seen with the change in the US elections, with changes around the world in advanced economies which have democratic norms. Now, if you disagree with democratic norms or change from democratic, then it gets complicated, of course. But have established democratic norms and institutional frameworks that work. Actually, changes in elections and changes in political parties have had a decreasing level of influence on financial markets.
It's 13 minutes until 8 o'clock, until news time. If you're just joining us, you're listening to a combination of Money Sense and the Business Buzz. And Simon Caudry. We have Simon who does hosts the Money Sense, and we have in the studio as well O.C. Connor. O.C. is our talk show host of For the Record. He's normally in here Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So he's gracing the studio here on Thursday. Morning again, gentlemen, and you're doing a good job. It's just interesting for me to sit here and listen. Hopefully I'll contribute at some point. But in the meantime, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll hear a lot more about Money Sense, how it works for politicians, politics, and good governance.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. Please be advised that the pension contribution holiday has been extended until 30th of June 2021. Employers and plan members should ensure arrangements are in place for salary deductions and remittance following this date. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan, keeping you informed. For further information, visit chamberpensions.ky, and for information as it happens, follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Email admin@pensions.ky or call 745-7630. We're here for you.
This is Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community. Brought to you by the CFA Society Cayman Islands.
And now, more Money Sense.
Welcome back to a combination of Money Sense, Business Buzz on this beautiful Thursday morning. We're the day post general elections in the Cayman Islands. Listened last night to the panel we had right here on Radio Cayman. Amazing commentary. Included Mr. Connor, Sterling Dwayne Banks, Mr. Loxley Banks, Anik, and
has OC just slept in the studio overnight? Has he left the Radio Cayman?
I was wondering this morning, but he's all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Look at you.
I'm accustomed to getting about 4 hours sleep.
How much coffee is in that mug?
Tea, not coffee.
Still got coffee.
So did you go riding this morning?
No. I substituted and rode yesterday instead. So I was out on the road when all of these school buses were crossing us at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and those were the election workers heading out to their various polling stations.
I think I'd struggle to be an election worker. I mean, 5 a.m. is not my cup of tea.
Yes, yeah.
That's early, isn't
You'll
it?
get used to it.
Once every 4 years. You can't.
You can start working from this year. Now, thank you so much, Simon and OC, for your contribution this morning. Money Sense makes good sense. Now, what does this new election mean financially for the Cayman Islands?
Well, that's a really. So I talked before the break about how limited impact Cayman politicians can have on a macro sense. But that doesn't mean we can't have impact on a micro sense. And what does macro and I can't even say the word. What does macro and micro mean? So macro means sort of the big things about influencing global sort of policy. That's why the way I'm using it. Micro means what happens within the Cayman Islands, in my sense. Different people will have different interpretations, but that's what I mean by it. So when you look at what politicians can do within the Cayman Islands, obviously that's material. We have a relatively good budgetary position. Of course, we do have a deficit. We've deliberately developed a deficit in order to pay for spending that would otherwise have been unavailable to pay for because of the decline in government revenue brought about by the pandemic, because we're obviously getting zero income or close to zero income from the tourism industry, which was historically 20% of the GDP. So that's a huge amount of money lost. And therefore, government quite reasonably said, well, we can't allow all those people in that industry who are Caymanians to not have a job, not be able to survive, not be able to live, and so supported those. And so there has been an increasing, there's been government spending to compensate for those things that have disappeared. Now, yes, it's always worrisome in a sense when governments have deficits, because deficits can theoretically go out of control and they can spiral into unpleasant places. So when you look around the Caribbean, Barbados, for instance, is an example of a country that a number of years ago had a fairly decent budgetary situation and then let things go out of control because the economy was quite weak. And so they've now gone through debt restructuring, defaults, and investors are reluctant to give them capital, and they are in a difficult economic situation. Cayman doesn't face that situation for a couple of reasons. One is Cayman's economic stewardship over the years has been quite decent, and also partly because rules imposed upon us by the UK prevent us from doing crazy things.
Including being enshrined in our constitution as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that's probably quite a sensible thing, albeit constitutional or things that are enshrined in constitution don't always necessarily allow you to adjust to extraordinary circumstances. And so that in some respects could be quite a dangerous thing that we, in hindsight, may wish that we hadn't. One day may wish that wasn't the case. But they're leaving that to one side, there are still mechanisms. Obviously, there is still the ability for government to borrow money, and it has the capacity, if it wanted to borrow substantially more money than it currently does. And so it could launch a spending program in Cayman, or or for Cayman. And so I say that because it doesn't have to spend money in Cayman. It could spend money promoting, advocating, lobbying elsewhere for the Cayman Islands. So it certainly could do that. So it has capital if it wants to spend money on roads. It has money if it wants to spend money on schools. It can do all of these things. The question then is the willingness and the appetite to do so. So the ability to spend money is not the constraining factor within the Cayman Islands. It's the appetite. And I obviously don't know what the new government will be, and therefore what their appetite will be to spend money or not. But we always need to bear in mind, it's very easy. Sometimes people think, well, why doesn't government just build that new road? Why doesn't government build that new airport, build that new whatever? Well, money that you borrow, you have to think about it in yourself. If you borrow lots of money from the bank, they do eventually want it back. And so you have to be fairly prudent about these things, because if I borrow money from the bank, I can go and get a job or get another job, or I can get a different job and I can earn money and pay it back. Governments can't really go out and get jobs. Their only source of revenue is taxation. And therefore the source of revenue for governments to repay the debt and to be prudent is to tax the three of us and the wider community in the Cayman Islands. And that, of course, has implications for everyone in the Cayman Islands. If we start, so we've got to be careful about that. But there is one other thing which I will say, which is a particular bugbear of mine, which is that we also need to be very mindful, and politicians over the years have been completely the opposite of mindful, completely lacking mindfulness about this, which is we do have long-term liabilities here in Cayman which are underappreciated. And one of those is the ability to fund people in retirement. Yes. We have a completely broken pension system in the private sector, and actually not terribly great in the public sector because of the ability to have enough money upon retirement to pay for your living expenses. And we also have a broken healthcare system where people will have insufficient income to pay for insurance to be able to afford healthcare when they are retired, because at the moment the healthcare system is tied to employment, which is a very dangerous proposition as more people edge away from being young towards being retired and therefore not employed and therefore not eligible for an employer-based health insurance plan. So those are two problems which are underappreciated and will need to be addressed in the coming couple of years, I think.
And the appetite for spending.
But Simon, we're seeing, as far as fiscal conservatism is concerned, we're seeing more and more governments moving away from that conservatism. And how much has the coronavirus pandemic impacted that? We see the UK, for instance, huge amount of spending. Their debt, they're going to be deep in debt. And I'm certain that the UK, who has control over a certain amount of control over our spending here as well, they have allowed us that flexibility because of the pandemic. Despite concerns about contingent liability and everything else, they have allowed that. So we're seeing more of that worldwide simply because of the pandemic. And any views on that?
Well, you're absolutely right. So let's go back to, I don't want to scare anybody, but if we remember back to the financial crisis, which was a few years ago, so it's in the distant past, and there was this anxiety that Greece was going to blow up, and then Italy was going to blow up, and Spain, and all these countries. The anxiety that people had, and these are the numbers at the time, were that somewhere like Greece had about total debt to GDP of about 115%. So one and a bit times its annual GDP was in debt, and that was considered absolutely beyond the pale, and therefore that would have to result in defaults. There were defaults, there were write-offs. Spain had this. The US's debt to GDP by the end of this year will be about 115%. It's obviously not beyond the pale anymore, or it's not beyond the pale for the US. So the world has clearly changed because of what would be, in an economist speak, an exogenous factor, something that one had no control over. And it's clear that the vast majority of the increased spending that's happened has been directly attributable to necessary spending to keep the wheels of the economy on the tracks. That doesn't mean that this doesn't need to be paid back, though, and that's the big unanswered question. And it also opens up the door, which is it's very difficult to persuade politicians once they've spent $1 million to next year only spend $500,000, or once they've spent $1 trillion to only spend $500 billion, because people get used to the $1 million, and then when they find only $500,000 is being spent, they feel as though they've been shortchanged, even though it's their money. And the reason, and then because they feel they've been shortchanged, they then have slightly less warmth towards the politician, which translates to slightly fewer votes, which translates to the politician gets worried that they won't get re-elected, which then translates back to the politician going, I better keep spending that $1 million. So it's a very difficult cycle to break. And that is certainly one reason why it's good that you have independent central banks, and also quite good that you have fiscal rules. So I'm not saying that fiscal rules aren't a good thing at all. They are. But you need to be mindful, to your point, that there are clearly factors that cause you to have to break those, because otherwise people would be suffering from starvation or whatever else it might be. So I think the vast majority is unambiguously pandemic related, but the unanswered question will be the ability of politicians globally to turn off the taps of spending is going to be the big question that will be intriguing to find out what happens to.
Yes.
So, interesting. I don't have much to add to that, Simon, because you said it all. My only thing is I admire New Zealand and the way they've handled their economy and how they're working everything through this pandemic.
Well, New Zealand is an interesting case, actually, because they have fiscal rules, but they chose to have fiscal rules. I mean, let's not beat around the bush on this one. New Zealand is an independent country which can make its own decisions, and they chose to have fiscal rules. Cayman's not an independent country. These rules were imposed upon us by a country that was already flouting its own rules. So the irony of this, let's not forget the irony of it.
Well, we still control most of it, don't we?
No, we don't control the ability to spend. We can spend within the limits that are given to us by the UK. Yes. But the UK very clearly says to us, this is the maximum you can spend. And yet the UK breaches the rules that it imposes on others. And so we have an overlord that tells us what to do and then breaks its own rules.
And on that note, before I break the rules of the news time, let me head it back over to studio. Thank you so much. If you're just joining us, you're listening to a combination of Money Sense and Business Buzz. After the news break, weather, traffic, and the whole 9 yards, we'll be back with more. Thank you.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. We are a not-for-profit, member-centric plan with a democratically elected volunteer board of trustees representing all sectors of the Cayman Islands economy. We have an all-in expense ratio of less than 1%, over 20,000 members, and $490 million in assets under management. We were the first multi-employer pension plan approved by the regulator in the late 1990s, and today we are still strong, secure, and are here for our employees and employers alike. If you would like to join or require further information, visit chamberpension.ky. And for information as it happens, follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Email admin@pensions.ky or call 745-7630. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. Money Sense is brought to you by the Chamber Pension Plan. For further information, visit chamberpension.ky.
At Foster's, we have better products at better prices.
We sure do. And on special this week, we have DiCecco pasta. Selected varieties for $1.89. Save 50 cents.
We also have Sea Best Raw Shrimp, 32 ounce, only $12.99. Save $5. And Jergens Skincare Lotions. Selected varieties, only $2.09. Save $1.
Price is good until April 21st, 2021. Find more great specials.
Shining in the sunlight. Shining in the sunlight.
Radio Cayman.
The 8 a.m. News is proudly sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. For further information, please visit chamberpension.ky.
For today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. We are a not-for-profit, member-centric plan with a democratically elected volunteer board of trustees representing all sectors of the Cayman Islands economy. We have an all-in expense ratio of less than 1%, over 20,000 members, and $490 million in assets under management. We were the first multi-employer pension plan approved by the regulator in the late 1990s, and today we are still strong, secure, and are here for our employees and employers alike. If you would like to join or require further information, visit chamberpension.ky. And for information as it happens, follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Email admin@pensions.ky or call 745-7630. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you.
With your latest news, I'm Karsley Fuller. All results from the 2021 general election were in by 11:30 Wednesday night. This was the first time voters chose who they would like to represent them in Parliament since it changed in 2019 from the Legislative Assembly. The results saw 12 incumbents and 19 newcomers, including 3 women, win 19 seats. The winners were Alda McLaughlin, Red Bay, Sabrina Turner, Prospect, Heather Bodden, Savannah, Wayne Patton, Newlands, Jay Ebanks, Northside, Isaac Rankin, East End, Moses Kirkconnell, Cayman Brac West and Little Cayman, and Juliana O'Connor Connolly for Cayman Brac East. Let's check in now with Radio Cayman's Dion Anglin, who brings us the results from West Bay.
Catherine Wilkes did what no other incumbent in West Bay Central could ever do. That was overthrow Captain Eugene Ebanks, who has been elected continuously since the inception of the one-man, one-vote system and parliamentarian for over 20 years. The incumbent defeated the veteran 539 to 392. Bernie Bush, on the other hand, won back his seat in West Bay North. Bush defeated Ralston Anglin 515 to 429 in a very close encounter. Andre Ebanks, on his first appearance on the political stage, emerged victorious in the West Bay South constituency, 796 to 309 over Raoul Nicholson Coe. Ebanks also saw the biggest crowd of the evening gathered at the John Gray Memorial Church in support of him. The most highly anticipated result, however, was the race between Mario Ebanks and the Honorable Makiva Bush. After the results for the first set of ballots were published, people could tell that this was not going to be a walk in the park for either candidate. Leads were exchanged twice during the night, causing supporters to hold on to the edges of their seats for the final result. But in the end, Mr. Bush was victorious with 458 votes to 431. But it should be noted that this was the first time in history that anyone has ever come this close to dethroning William Makiva Bush. Reporting for Radio Cayman News from West Bay, I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio Cayman's Felicia Rankin-Salins had the results from Georgetown.
Elections are now officially over, but it certainly kept us on our toes all day yesterday. Ultimately, incumbent independent Kenneth Bryan won Georgetown Central with 851 votes against progressive Frank Cornwall with 126, and incumbent Roy McTaggart, who was cool as a cucumber, so to speak, when I spoke with him last night, won Georgetown East with 645 votes against Emily DeCoux with 217, Christina Hislop Rowlandson with 76, Frank McField with 61, and Richard Bernard with 7, respectively. However, the night was calm in the areas of Georgetown I was in. I didn't see any boisterous parties on the streets, but I could see on my drives through neighborhoods many cars lined up on side streets and homes filled to the brim with people gathered for celebrating. I could see some people held elections viewing parties in their homes, so I think that shows the kind of anticipation that was felt last night. But now the winners are in, and the work for the winning candidates has only just begun. For Radio Cayman News, I'm Felicia Rankin-Salins.
Joseph Hugh took Georgetown North, Barbara Connolly Georgetown South, and David White Georgetown West. And successful wins for incumbents in Boddentown. Radio Cayman's Shanda Gallego has the details.
Surrounded by a crowd of supporters, it was a rather emotional win for incumbent Dwayne Seymour, who was declared the successful candidate for the parliamentary seat in Boddentown East with 735 votes. Osborne Bodden received 472 votes. Over in Boddentown West, it was Chris Saunders declared winner for the parliamentary seat in that electoral district of Boddentown West with 902 votes. Vincent Frederick received 231 votes. For Radio Cayman News, I'm Shanda Gallego.
Now that Election Day is over and we are getting a closer look at the results, who will form the next government is the big question on the mind of voters. Radio Cayman's April Cummings reports.
Officially, the Progressives won 7 of 19 seats, and adding in member of the Alliance Dwayne Seymour, that still leaves them short of a majority. During the last election, it took some 5 days for the Progressives to pull together what became the unity government. Even before the final counts were in last night, the speculation was already well underway, since it isn't clear just yet who will align themselves with whom and for what. So what's usually on the table? The promise of a ministry seat or other attractive opportunity, but ultimately it's about who can pull together a team of elected members of parliament to form a government. April Cummings, Radio Cayman News.
For full details on Wednesday's vote, head to elections.ky. That's your latest news. I'm Karsley Fuller from Radio Cayman's Newsroom.
The 8 a.m. news is proudly sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. For further information, please visit chamberpension.ky.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. Are you aware of the performance of your pension plan? The Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan provides quarterly fund fact sheets for our members to stay informed with the plan's performance. For the year ended August 31st, various life cycle funds provided returns between 9.2% and 16.5%, and our all-in expense ratio is currently the lowest it's ever been, a record low at 0.72%. Visit chamberpension.ky to review our fund fact sheets. You can see the performance as far back as 10 years. Remember that pensions are a longer-term investment strategy. Focus on the long term rather than the short-term returns. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan continues to perform for you.
Stay in touch with Radio Cayman for the latest in news and information.
Follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
I'm looking for a new pizza joint with that perfect crust. My car needs a bit of a tune-up, and my pregnant wife needs something from the pharmacy. So I turned to the printed yellow directory, and in an instant, the pizzas are ordered, the oil change is booked, and the thing that I'm not allowed to say out loud has been purchased for my wife. Problem solved. When you need something quick, do yourself a favor. Flip through the printed yellow directory. Stop searching, start finding. Yellow, we know local.
Why work with a Suriba agent? We can tell you that those letters represent a proven understanding of the real estate market in the Cayman Islands. But it also means so much more than that. Our trained Suriba agents are committed to ethics, integrity, and excellence of practice. It's all about confidence, knowing you are working with a qualified Suriba agent. As members of Suriba, your trust is our promise. To find a Suriba agent today or to search thousands of listens, visit Suriba.com. Suriba, the mark of excellence in real estate.
The 8:10 a.m. weather report, Monday through Friday, is proudly sponsored by Pan American International Insurance Corporation. Pan American International Insurance Corporation, meeting the life, accident, and health insurance needs of individuals and businesses to ensure financial security and peace of mind. For more information, call 949-8304 or visit www.palig.com. That's PALIG.com.
For over 100 years, more than 5.8 million people across the Americas and the Caribbean have placed their trust in Pan American Life Insurance Group. We have delivered on our promise and have proven that we're more than just an insurance company, we're family. To learn more about our first-in-class group health and employee benefit solutions, please visit Pan American Life Insurance Company of the Cayman Islands at Unit 221, Cannon Place East, North Sound Road, Grand Cayman, or contact us at 949-8304. You can also visit us online at www.palig.com. Pan American Life. People you can trust for life.
The 8:10 a.m. weather report, Monday through Friday, is proudly sponsored by Pan American International Insurance Corporation. Pan American International Insurance Corporation, meeting the life, accident, and health insurance needs of individuals and businesses to ensure financial security and peace of mind. For more information, call 949-8304 or visit www.palig.com. That's PALIG.com.
For additional weather information, visit www.weather.gov.ky. As well, stay in touch with Radio Cayman for the latest in news and information. Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
For over 100 years, more than 5.8 million people across the Americas and the Caribbean have placed their trust in Pan American Life Insurance Group. We have delivered on our promise and have proven that we are more than an insurance company. We are family. To learn more about our first-in-class individual and group life, disability and accident solutions, please visit Pan American International Insurance Corporation at Unit 221, Cannon Place East, North Song Road, Grand Cayman, or contact us at 949-8304 and visit us online at www.palig.com. Pan American Life, people you can trust for life.
During these unprecedented times, Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands, is pleased to bring you the Cayman Strong Series. The Cayman Strong Series is brought to you by OnCourse Cayman. Visit oncourse.ky to view a full list of wellness services and their qualified team. OnCourse Cayman, health, wellness, and happiness.
Achieving your goals is a very rewarding feeling, but at times can feel very frustrating, especially if and when we miss our target. As you approach your goals in life, set yourself up for success.
When setting your goals, celebrate your progress. It's important to acknowledge progress each step of the way as you achieve your goals. Everything that you do to move in that direction gets you a little closer. Planning small rewards along the way can help to keep things interesting and give us a taste of what sweet success will be like.
Change your thinking and change your life.
Radio Cayman's Cayman Strong Series was brought to you by OnCourse Cayman. Visit oncourse.ky to view a full list of wellness services and their qualified team. OnCourse Cayman, health, wellness, and happiness.
These days, feelings of loneliness, anxiety, stress, and depression can be overwhelming. Just know you are not alone. OnCourse Cayman offers private mental health services for children, teens, adults, and groups. Visit oncourse.ky to view a full list of wellness services and their qualified team. OnCourse Cayman, health, wellness, and happiness.
The traffic report is brought to you by Subway. Planning a meeting, event, or office celebration? Visit subway.ky to place your catering order today.
Things just got a bit hotter on the island. Come in today and order the new spicy Korean subs at Subway. They're sweet, spicy, and especially satisfying. Stop in and try the pulled pork with spicy Korean sauce, or the chicken with spicy Korean sauce. And you can message WhatsApp at 929-4658. Order online or use Let's Eat or the Bento app. The spicy Korean subs at Subway in 2 flavors, extra saucy and extra spicy. Subway, eat fresh.
The traffic report is brought to you by Subway. Planning a meeting, event, or office celebration? Visit subway.ky to place your catering order today.
And now,
Radio Cayman presents
The Business Buzz, an insightful and fresh take on a variety of issues that impact the local business environment. This is where we address the business topics that matter.
Radio Cayman's Business Buzz.
Here's your host,
Anita Khan.
Welcome back to combination of Money Sense and the Business Buzz. We have in the studio with me this morning. It's a privilege to host this show this morning, having OC sitting right across the table from me and Simon Caudry of Money Sense, OC of For the Record. I'm learning so much this morning. It's a first, and hopefully it won't be the last.
Hopefully not. Yes.
Hopefully not. And we're discussing all things money, politics, just about everything. We're not going into a horse show or any such stuff, horse trading, that is. Now, how long we'll go on the show this morning is nobody's, we're not sure. We could take it as long as we want. We have the time, right, OC?
It's uncertain as we are in relation to what type of government we're likely to get.
And that's a good segue. I like it. Into the next question about some of the issues that we can that can have an impact on the business sector and the economy. And before we go into that, I want to say, OC, that and Simon, that a lot of folks are saying that some of the big developers, they've been given unfairly given concession that should not have been given to them. Your thoughts?
Well, it's an important conversation that in every country, and I don't mean to pick on Cayman, but we're in Cayman, so we'll talk specifically, I suppose. But around the world, governments have a propensity to give bribes, shall we call them that, to persons to encourage them to develop, whether it be to build a factory, build a hotel, build an airport. These things are given, and we should call them what they are, because they are nothing but bribes. Because will you build your factory? Will Toyota build its factory in Alabama? No. Will Toyota build its factory in Alabama if it's bribed with no taxes for 10 years? Sure. What is that? Is that a concession? Sure. But is that the same as a bribe? Yes. Now, why is that economically beneficial? So presumably there's some logic as to why a politician would do that, other than just being elected, right? Because there must be some economic rationale. If it leads to long-term prosperity in that region, that can be advantageous. However, the only research that's really been published on this, and there has been some independent research done on this by some academics, suggests that concessions, when they're given by politicians and governments to developers in a broad context or companies, don't actually generate the economic benefits that they promised to do. So let me give you a very clear and obvious example. Taking the US, most US cities that have NFL football teams, American football teams, have basically paid for the NFL's stadium, NFL team stadium, out of concessions or other such thing. That creates, on a net basis, once you account for all the people that go and watch it, all the rest of the thing, it creates generally a loss to the treasury of that state or that city or that town. There's clear evidence of this, clear research that shows this. And that's no different when it's building a factory, when it's building a hotel, building an airport. And yet politicians continue with this. So if we're willing to accept that independent research shows that these sorts of concessions on a global scale don't have economic sense, then the only reason that would be logical to assume as to why they're done is because they make political sense. Hence, they are bribes.
Got a head shake from OC.
So you can't, if they don't make economic sense, then they can only really be making political sense, which means that they allow politicians to pretend that something's happening which really isn't, which helps to get them re-elected. So to take an example in Cayman, if I were to go and buy a condo from a big, medium-sized developer in Cayman right now, they will have got often import duty concessions on the lumber, on the concrete, on the stuff they've brought in. Okay, I go and buy my $1 million condo and they've got concessions on doing that because they've created employment. If I were to go and build my own house for exactly the same amount of money, I've created exactly the same amount of employment because I've built a unit that holds me and it's cost exactly the same amount of money. I've paid the government tax for that. Why is it okay for the profit margins of developers to be enhanced through government policy, but my tax to be higher. So why are we subsidising corporations over at the expense of Caymanians? That's what we're doing. So every Caymanian is paying more to the government than they need to because of concessions that are given. Now, if there is some logical economic reason for doing so, then I will concede that that's a benefit. But I have never seen a study, ever, that's been produced by an independent party that shows that those sorts of concessions in the long run are beneficial to the country that issued them. So we should just stop them tomorrow.
One of the arguments that has been used in relation to concessions is if you're trying to attract investors and trying to entice businesses to come to the jurisdiction, and you're having difficulty otherwise in doing that may be a carrot for doing that. But in most instances, that is not the case. And people point to the Cayman Islands and say, here we are, we're fairly prosperous, not lacking investors. People are clamoring to come here.
Exactly.
Why is there a need to grant concessions?
Well, I think that is precisely my perspective, and I'll turn this into a slightly different view. Enterprise City in the Cayman Islands, what problem was that solving? Because that's a concession. People get work permits at quicker than if I want to hire somebody. It takes me months and months and months to get a work permit approved, but you can go and get a free work permit indirectly by paying a subsidy to Enterprise City. What was that solving? That was solving inefficiency in government departments about the speed of work permits and the speed of processing. Well, solve the fundamental problem and then open Cayman up to be an enterprise economy, and so that everyone's treated fairly. Otherwise, you treat people as first class and second class and third class citizens. And sadly, then you get resentment. So you will find people be resentful of the fact that someone on earning $50,000 is paying tax to the government to support someone who's building a $20 million property and making $2 million out of that. That's a very regressive system. So subsidies like this are regressive systems in almost all instances. And you're right, clamoring is the word we're looking at here. There's no doubt that people want to invest in Cayman.
No doubt.
The question is, why are we giving them free opportunities to do so when Caymanians have to pay more tax than foreigners? If ever there were a rallying cry that politicians should be able to rally around, would be Caymanian, let's promote the benefits for Caymanians. Let's improve opportunities for Caymanians. Let's reduce costs for Caymanians. Instead, we're reducing costs for foreigners. We're reducing costs for non-Caymanians. We're increasing taxes on the poorest Caymanians. That makes no logical economic sense. It must only make political sense, therefore.
It should make money sense, right?
Great line.
We have a caller on the line this morning. It's Mr. Wesley Howell from the Elections Office. Good morning, Mr. Howell.
Hi, good morning, Anita. How are you?
I am good. How are you? You sung all, before you even answered that, you sung all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
We're still in the midst of our post-election wrap-up. We had, folks doing their bits to return classrooms back to the students this morning, and we still have some processing to do with documents from the BRAC. So we're at it.
So you had a good day yesterday. You had a good run, we would say.
And congratulations to you and your staff, Mr. Howell.
Thank you so much, Mr. Connor. Fantastic team of people to work with. So really proud that we were able to deliver what we're known for, efficient, free and fair, transparent elections.
And we are proud of you and your team as well.
Thank you.
So you have some questions for Mr. Howell, I'm sure?
The turnout, we know that the number of registered electors increased. Did you have a slight downturn in the voter turnout?
Nationally, yes. So we had 2,421 new voters on in comparison to 2017. The national average this time around was 73.1%, and that's down from 74.06 in 2017. But that's the national vote. When you look a little bit more micro at some of the results, and districts like Northside had more voters yesterday by the close of polls than they had registered voters in 2017. So in relation to some of the districts, over 80% voter turnout and significant percentages of voters coming out on the polls.
At what stage will you be able to break down and give us information on the demographics of those who voted? We were OC and I were discussing this during the break, and we're always interested in how the new generations of people who register to vote, what their turnout is and such like. So at what stage will we have that sort of information to be able to pass that and understand that?
So traditionally we haven't published demographics on the actual voter turnout. We published the overall numbers, but not specifically on the voter turnout. That may be something that we can dissect and publish going forward. I know inquiring minds want to know what the demographics are, but it is fairly obvious that the increase in voter registration, particularly in the younger demographics, sort of played out yesterday in the numbers coming to the polls.
Fabulous.
Another question, Mr. Howell. The decision that was announced on the 13th, the day before the election, in relation to the mixing of the postal ballots and the early voting ballots as well, mobile voting. How was that received by the candidates? Did they understand the rationale as to why that was being done?
I did actually get a few calls from some very concerned minds about why the 11th hour. And it was a concern of mine that was bubbling from the time we were sort of going through the recommendations from the last international observer mission. In 2017, when we went from 7 electoral districts to 19, the number of persons voting in each electoral district became smaller for those larger districts. And as it played out in terms of the numbers, we ended up with postal ballots issued in some districts as little as 1 in Cayman Brac East and West, and 7 in East End. So when our legislation says that we have to count 1 box at a time and finalize that box before we move on, counting 1 postal ballot box with 1 vote in it is absolutely opposite of voter secrecy. So, that was the push to ensure that we could actually intermingle those ballots with polling day ballots and be able to then help to better protect voter identity. And for me, that's an insurance policy that future voters won't be hesitant to vote because their vote could be revealed because of those sort of rules that were geared around larger counts in more dense multi-member electoral districts.
A question, if I may. Obviously, everyone's been affected by the COVID pandemic in terms of travel, restrictions on what one can do and such like internationally. And elections are nothing if not affected by such things, although we're very fortunate in Cayman not to have restrictions on what we can do within the country. But this did restrict neutral observers coming to the Cayman Islands. So maybe you could just speak to how we ensured the presentation to the outside world of the integrity of our system. Just remind people as to what happened there.
Okay, so we do have the UK CPA international observers doing a virtual observation. So they're looking at sort of more macro issues, legislation, constitutional issues, and those sorts of things. But we also went through a more formal process and an independent process of appointing domestic observers, and they've been quite active from the time we were doing our second round of mobile voting. They were there, and the way that our voting system has evolved over time and is enshrined in legislation, we have very active candidate agent type scrutiny as well. So from the time a ballot box was open and shown open and empty before the polls opened at 7 in the morning, agents literally were with that ballot box all the way through to when it was counted and the results announced last night. So we have agents, we have domestic observers, we have international observers, and we open as much as we can up to public information and so forth. So overall, I think we have one of the cleanest ships in relation to election operations, and that multi-layer approach to scrutiny I think is something that is very positive, and we look forward to receiving the results from the domestic observer teams. They were active on Grand Cayman and Cayman Brac yesterday, and I think they have a press conference or a press release coming up sometime today. And as part of our team, we were huddled at 1:30 this morning saying, okay, we need to schedule our debrief now to see what things we can improve on for the next time around. So when those recommendations come through as well, we'll review those in that aspect also.
There was some, maybe this is a question for you and also perhaps bring in OC on this, but there was some angst in the public or in the press about the lack of recommendations that were acted upon from the last election. How would you respond to that concern?
So the last International Observer Mission made a series of recommendations. Those recommendations range from operational changes to constitutional changes. So while the observations themselves come through, the implementation of them, one in some cases require an act of cabinet onto Parliament, but in the case of constitutional changes, that's more involved because we're then talking about the relationship with the UK's Privy Council and those things that go into passing constitutional changes. So we look forward to having some public discussion on the way forward in relation to modernization of our Elections Act and what the next round of recommendations will be. But it is quite difficult to make changes to legislation without the parliamentary support for that, and we just didn't have that this time around.
So I guess what I'm hearing you say then is that we need that fresh crop of politicians that have been elected this time to take seriously the importance of future democratic elections and to perhaps introduce a commission or a consideration of taking very seriously recommendations that are given to make potential changes.
Yeah, and strike while the iron is hot, while everything is still fresh in people's mind, that we should take the necessary actions now.
Mr. Howell, you have a caller on the line who would like to ask you a question. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I heard some discussion about breaking down the voter turnout by demographics, and I'm wondering if that wouldn't create a conflict between voter privacy and breaking down a particular constituency by the demographics.
It was a macro view of what that demographic was in relation to who votes. That process is transparent in that the candidates and their agents are able to receive lists of persons who are eligible to vote at a polling division, and they actually are able to check off the individuals that come. That's an important check and balance, that we're not letting people vote who aren't eligible to vote, and we're not letting people vote more than once. So while there is a overwhelming desire and mandate to protect the secrecy of the vote, in some aspects we also have an equally serious mandate in that we need to be transparent enough that the results are trusted, because it can be connected to evidence that it was done very properly.
And maybe I can jump in with a comment for the caller there. In reality, and OC educated me on this during one of our breaks, in reality, that information is already available to all the candidates who have observers at the booths. So what we're talking about here is simply publishing that in an independent way so that we have the facts. Because the candidates know precisely whether 50 young people or 100 old people or 30 middle-aged people like me have voted, because they're standing outside. They know that. They don't know. No one knows how they voted, but it's simply the demographics of what quantum of people have voted. And the reason that's important is it helps people understand, are there reasons that certain groups of people haven't voted? Perhaps young people didn't vote because they are doing certain types of jobs that can't allow them to go out at certain times, and that might lead to a situation where you need to change the law to allow different times of voting. So that's the reason to be making those sorts of suggestions.
No, absolutely.
Mr. Howell? Okay, caller, are you still there? call it there. Not there. Okay. We're going to take a break, but not right now. DJ Lynn, I've got instructions to take a break, but I've got a question from Mr. Howell. Mr. Howell, just taking a look at an analysis of how the results were delivered. Do you believe that any improvements are needed?
With
regards to delivering
we
results,
always debrief. We always aim for improvement. So in 2017, in relation to reporting from the operations in the field, we had counts coming in from over 20 counting stations. They were all coming into a single radio channel, and we created a traffic jam of results coming in. This time around, we increased our radio channels to 4, deployed some additional call takers, and changed up our systems. So we were more efficient in recording the numbers coming in, and that sort of played out with us being able to publish very, very up-to-date numbers. I think we did so well that the websites which people were trying to get the latest information from were starting to get bogged down at around the 9-10 o'clock, when many of the districts were starting to report significant results in relation to their count.
A question, if I might, for you. We're now in the warmth of the post-election process before the politicking starts, and people are enthused about the fact there's been a voting system which has gone exceptionally well, and commendations to your team. There will be people perhaps who are listening to this who said, I'd actually like to help with future process and volunteer time and such like. So people, I guess I'm giving you an opportunity to perhaps communicate to people if they have an appetite to be a volunteer in whatever capacity, how would they actually learn more and therefore put their name down on a list to be a willing participant at future elections? Just tell us about that.
So we actually have a running form on our website for persons to apply to be election day workers. We go from a full-time staff complement of 2 in the office to just under 600 folks when we deliver all of the necessary machinery to have the voting across all electoral districts done in a way that they aren't long lines and very credible. So we always have some turnover of individuals, and that volunteer form is there. We do have a code of conduct that's also available on our website, and because we want to be impartial in the way that we deliver an election, that code of conduct is actually quite important to us. And everyone from or most junior person to myself, go through and sign off on that code of conduct, and we live up to that.
And so that's on your portal.elections.ky. There's a section called Forms. And I was just doing it as you were speaking because you educated me. There's Elections Office recruitment form somewhere down there, I think, is the one you're referring to. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Howell, before I let you go this morning so you can get some sleep.
Actually, we're meeting the returning officers from the BRAC, bringing over their materials in about a half an hour. So, yeah, there's a lot less.
Sleep's overrated.
Sleep is definitely overrated for him. Quick question. Future outlook for elections, what in the Cayman Islands? Can you give us your thoughts on that?
There have been strong talk about establishing an elections commission. That's a sort of policy governing board that would sit above the logistical machinery of delivering the moving parts of an election. That requires constitutional change, and I sort of look forward to those discussions and seeing how much we can evolve over the next 4 years. We have, by constitutional requirement, a boundaries commission due by 2023. So again, there's a lot of bits that will happen over the next 3 years and 4 years in relation to the electoral cycle that I think will be important for the country to pay close attention to.
If I may, one more question before you go, Mr. Howell. We have seen in the past, after the results have been delivered, some court challenges in relation to candidates' qualifications. Can you explain to our listening audience what procedures have been put in place to eliminate the possibility of that, and why we're highly unlikely to see any questions in relation to qualifications being challenged in the courts at this after this election?
So in 2016, we received an amendment to the elections law that inserted the provision for the supervisor of elections to, one, request information in relation to candidates' qualifications from the relevant government agencies, but also the provision, so pre-election, for the supervisor to challenge the courts to make a determination as to whether or not a person who submitted a nomination form is duly qualified to stand for elected office. So in 2017, that sort of played out in relation to 3 candidates being challenged through the court system. One was successful in defending their qualifications for elected office, and 2 were received the outcome that they were not qualified to run for office. This time around, as soon as nominations was done, that is the trigger for which we can then request information in relation to a candidate's qualification. We went through and assessed those candidates for which we had questions about, and then sought the necessary legal advice in relation to, whether or not there were areas for concern, and if it reached the level of which we needed to seek a declaration. So the scrutiny that we were able to do at that point eliminated the doubt that candidates weren't qualified for office.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. We'll let you go. You have work to do, and we don't want to hold you back, but we want to say thank you so much for checking in this morning on Radio Cayman, and good luck.
No, thank you much.
And congratulations again, too, sir.
And I guess you don't want I guess you don't want another referendum in a few weeks' time, do you?
That's another story, Simon. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue discussion here on Radio Cayman. I want to say thank you to our sponsors, Cayman Medical Supplies and Cayman Insurance Center.
The Business Buzz is proudly sponsored by Cayman Medical Supplies. Call them at 949-6211. Cayman Insurance Center, celebrating 45 years in the Cayman Islands, specializing in property, life, and other lines of insurance products and services. And Digicel Business. Get everything your business needs in one package with Digicel Business Hub.
2020. Unprecedented times, uncertainty, and literally a new way of life.
Life happens, usually without warning.
That is why making sure that your family is insured is so important.
Cayman Insurance Center, 47 years strong, working to protect your family and your most valuable assets.
Whether you need to get a quote, renew a policy, or file a claim, Cayman Insurance Center is here to protect you and your family.
For more information, call 949-4657. Cayman Insurance Center, specializing in property, life, health, motor, and other lines of insurance products and services at affordable rates.
Oh gosh.
Don't let the stress of taking care of loved ones get you down.
Home care, now made easier with Cayman Medical Supplies. 100% Caymanian owned. Cayman Medical Supplies now stocks a wide range of home care supplies. Hospital beds, all types of wheelchairs, including beach access wheelchairs, lifts, commodes, shower chairs, walkers, Curad brand orthopedic supplies. Free blood glucose monitors with the purchase of 1 pack of test strips, blue underpads, and a whole lot more.
Need home care convenience? Drop by Cayman Medical Supplies at 93 Smith Road, Windward Center, or call 949-6211. Free delivery.
Open 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Still delivering island-wide for your convenience.
Bacardi presents One Love Legends of Reggae Concert. Friday, April 16th at Coral Beach from 4 p.m. featuring Mr. Notch and Local Motion 345. Erica Assad, Bonafide Cayman, Janny Lou, and DJ Craig. Free entry all night. VIP $25 at eventpro.ky. One Love is brought to you by Bacardi, the Ministry of Health, Environment, Culture and Housing, Coral Beach, Burger Shack, Cayman Islands Department of Tourism, Supermix, Caymanian Times, and Radio Cayman.
Business Buzz. Anita Khan.
Welcome back to the Business Buzz. This is still a combination of Business Buzz, Money Sense. It's an exciting time for the Business Buzz this morning. I have in the studio, or still have in the studio, Mr. Simon Caudry, and across from him, Mr. O.C. Connor. And very good discussion going on this morning. I'm a great listener, in case you didn't notice.
and now OC and I are going to get into a bare-knuckled fight or debate.
Do I need to get the bell out?
Yes. We started this during the break, but I'd rather like to ask OC a question, if I may.
Go right ahead, Simon.
So OC, the question comes back with the context of this. As I look through the election results, in some districts you can win your seat with 266 votes. In others, 315, 394, 348. These are small numbers. Do we have too many MPs?
I would argue the opposite, and I actually made some notes in relation to that about the size of the membership of Parliament and whether or not the size that we have now, and we'll see this with the horse trading that is likely to take place. 19 members elected. If we decide to take one person out of that 19 to be the speaker, then we've reduced it to 18. We have a cabinet now that will add one more cabinet seat. Instead of 7, we're likely to have 8, which will then reduce the numbers in the backbench, and you will have, no doubt, have a smaller opposition as well. I would advocate for an increase in the number of members of Parliament, and maybe possibly having 2 representatives for each electoral district. I wouldn't advocate for some having 2 and some having 1. I think it has to be across the board, 2 in each electoral district. Reduce the salaries that members of Parliament are paid so that you can accommodate them. I believe that that would lead to a more effective opposition and a more of an opposition, or a government in waiting, an opposition that is actually a government in waiting. Last night we spoke about that, and if the opposition is reduced to 4, 5, or even 6 members of Parliament, if you wanted to have shadow ministers in the opposition, you just don't have the numbers. One person may have to take to shadow more than one ministry. So I would advocate, and what it also does, it increases public participation in our democratic process as well.
Okay, well, I was told a couple of days ago by my mother, when I told her I was doing this, to be respectful, and so I will be. I'll try to be. But there were it's been said that in the last 4 or 5 years, some of the members of cabinet have been clearly out of their depth. So we have potentially people who have no competence about the brief that they've got. In the US, as an example, I'm not pretending the US political system's by any stretch of the imagination the panacea of nirvana of goodness, but it's not the only. But ministers do not necessarily need to be elected. In the UK, you don't need to be elected either. You can be appointed as a minister. Yes. And so in that scenario, you could have a smaller, higher paid group of appointed representatives who are therefore encouraging people from the right backgrounds to get elected, who would have the ability to hire professional persons to oversee departments that are important, and then they would have ultimate control with the elected people, who would be acting much more of a governance rather than a doing sort of capacity. So then you'd have fewer people, potentially of a higher caliber, who would hire people with the right experience to be the minister for a certain department or area. That would be my thing. So I look at this and say, well, you take a US state, you have a governor, who's an elected governor, elected by the people in a popular referendum, or the City of London, a London mayor, and then you have a council around him or her who monitors and is responsible for, I guess, critiquing the policies that are adopted and passing and finding fault and all the rest of it. But then you can appoint people with salary to help carry out policy actions. So that would be my perspective on how something would have, and therefore you would have people being elected to act as a force for challenge, but the person who is elected to lead the country in a popular sort of referendum then gets to appoint people on a salaried position to act as ministers.
Okay, I would 2 points there. Number one, the appetite in the Cayman Islands by the voting public for persons to serve in government who are unelected, there is really no appetite, in my opinion, for that. And my response to another part of that would be that until we solve the situation in relation to the employment of Caymanians in government and outside of government, any flexibility of any elected leader to hire someone who's in a professional capacity, we would have to bind that elected politician's hands to a certain extent to ensure that Caymanians are the ones whose faces are showing up in those positions. Otherwise, we end up with a problem in the Cayman Islands.
And I think that would be absolutely possible. So your first point, I think, is probably the bigger problem insofar as if there isn't the appetite, it doesn't happen. But I just worry that, I guess, going to Anita's point, which was very much earlier in the show, which was, can we not fight a battle, choose a different, perhaps it was your point, both of your points, choose a different way of approaching our approach with the world. Mm-hmm. It's kind of difficult to do that if the people that are doing that aren't necessarily qualified or competent to do that because they happen to be a member of a party as opposed to having experience in that area. And then you actually make the situation worse for your country because you send the wrong people into battle. Mm-hmm. You've got to send the right people at the right time in the right circumstances into the right battle. You can't be sending the wrong people, and that's the worry that I think could otherwise be percolated through.
And the other point also, Simon, is that bearing in mind that government ministers, they will make policy, and the carrying out of that policy is left really to the civil service. So you have the professionals within the ranks of the civil service, to do that as well in terms of your chief officers. And
I have no quarrel whatsoever with the chief officers, who I think in almost all cases do a tremendous job. I think the issue is, are politicians necessarily experienced enough and have the resources around them to actually create policy? Mm-hmm. Because in a lot of countries you have teams of people that help develop policy, you have think tanks, and we just don't have that infrastructure here in Cayman to enable policy debate and policy thought. That's the challenge that I think we face. It's the ability to develop what policy might be without the resources to encourage that.
Yeah. Because if you look at in the early days, the young lawyers that came to Cayman in the 60s and in the 70s, many of them, the Walkers and others, were influential in terms of helping government to write laws and things of that nature.
And I'm certainly not advocating for more lawyers in government. That's the last thing. But just to this point, though, it seems to me, you look at some of these districts, and it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to imagine it's not that difficult to know 350 people and to, over the course of a 2-year period leading up to an election, do the right thing, or maybe the wrong thing, I should say, do the wrong thing to persuade enough people to vote for you, thereby reducing the chance that anyone can really compete against you. Mm-hmm. So that there's the risk of corruption in the system with so few people being required to win seems to me to be quite significant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can we ask for a timeout here?
Cool. Sure.
We've got 2 callers on the line. Lynn, first caller, please. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a beautiful day in the Cayman Islands.
It sure is.
And I want to say, I just want to shout out to my people that I wanted to be elected. Only 3 now made it. That's Sabrina, Wayne, Heather, Makiva, Barney, Andre, and Kenneth. Congratulations to you guys. Good job, well done. I'm sorry that Mr. Arden, Mr. Ozzy, and Mr. Ezer didn't make it, but it's not the end of the world. I remember the song, you lick him down, he bounced right back in my hard man for dead. Well, on account of dead, none of us succeed next time. Somebody had to win, but unfortunately, I never made it, but I still got my back.
Well, thank you. Look like most of you on your list got selected, so you're a happy trooper this morning, aren't you?
You should buy some lottery tickets if you got that, right?
Was that the cabinet that you named out there for us?
Thank you, caller. We have a second caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Hello?
Good morning.
Good morning. Go ahead. We're listening.
Good morning, Mr. O.C. This is Steve McField.
Morning, Doc.
Morning, Mr. McField. We also have Simon Cordray in the studio.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Carter.
Hello.
I think I was one of the boundary commissioners the last boundary review, and we thought the point you made about in some districts you only need 200 or something votes to get elected. We canvassed the country, and we although there was some talk about amalgamating those two districts, and those districts are north side. He sent Cayman Brac West and Little Cayman and East and Cayman Brac East, and that did not go down well with the people. The people did not want that, and so that's why we didn't amalgamate them, so that we could have more people in that demographics. We could have more people and in those areas as selectors. That did not go down well in the country. The second point you made about hiring ministers to represent the elected members, I think that's not going to go down in Cayman. That sounds more like an American type of system, where you get elected and then you choose your cabinet from the outside. That is not going to go down well, because what that will do is that will certainly shift the control of Caymanians in their own home to some people from outside. And I think that is a preponderance idea. It's not going to go down well, and I don't think Caymanians would want that. The better way would be if we had a bicameral parliament, and we had a Senate, and people got elected in the Senate. That would be a different way. Then you could appoint ministers from the Senate, but to appoint ministers from outside the private sector to come to run the government, I don't think that's going to go down well, sir. So I think you can shelve that. You can shelve that idea.
That's fine. I'm throwing out an idea to be provocative, but I'd push back on one thing, if I may, of you, or just not push back, but ask you a question. In which other country is a district represented by so few people as to 500 or 950 people?
Matter. In many countries, I think you have a disparity in the numbers of representatives from each electoral district. What matters is that the district is represented, and it really doesn't matter in this respect. And then when you look at the geographical area, those areas are large areas. To amalgamate those districts would almost be half of the country. Would be in one district, and that did not go down well with people. Dr.
Steve, we have to take a break for the news. Do you want to hold the line or rejoin us at some point? It'll be a short break, but you can hold the line if you like. It's 2.5 after 9 o'clock. Good morning. If you're just joining us, this is a combination of Money Sense and Business Buzz. We have in the studio Simon Cordray and OC, and myself, Anita, and they're doing most of the heavy loading. I'm just listening, and we ask you to stay tuned. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion.
From district to district, moving through the waters to Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Your station, your voice. All things Cayman. One radio, many people. This is home.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only two species that we have, on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice.
It is in the best interest of the people of these islands.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
Meetings and discussions are expected to take place today and over the next coming days as the newly elected members attempt to form a government. Election results were in by 11:30 Wednesday night. Head to the elections.ky website to find the full list of winners. The United States has announced a range of new sanctions against Russia in response to what it says are cyber attacks. The measures, detailed in an executive order signed by President Joe Biden, are aimed at, quote, deterring Russia's harmful foreign activities. The moves target 32 Russian entities that include the expulsion of diplomats. The U.S. accuses Russia of malicious cyber activity and interference in the 2020 presidential election. A U.S. former police officer who shot dead a black man in Minnesota has been charged with second-degree manslaughter. Kim Potter was arrested and later released on $100,000 bail. Police say Mrs. Potter shot Dante Wright accidentally, having mistakenly drawn her gun instead of her taser. Responding to the charges, the Wright family lawyer Ben Crump says the killing was, quote, intentional, deliberate, and unlawful use of force. Those are your headlines. I'm Karsley Fuller.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Oh gosh.
Don't let the stress of taking care of loved ones get you down.
Home care, now made easier with Cayman Medical Supplies. 100% Caymanian owned. Cayman Medical Supplies now stocks a wide range of home care supplies. Hospital beds, all types of wheelchairs, including beach access wheelchairs, lifts, commodes, shower chairs, walkers, Curad brand orthopedic supplies. Free blood glucose monitors with the purchase of 1 pack of test strips, blue underpads, and a whole lot more.
Need home care convenience? Drop by Cayman Medical Supplies at 93 Smith Road, Windward Center, or call 949-6211. Free delivery.
Open 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Still delivering island-wide for your convenience.
2020. Unprecedented times, uncertainty, and literally a new way of life.
Life happens, usually without warning.
That is why making sure that your family is insured is so important.
Cayman Insurance Center, 47 years strong, working to protect your family and your most valuable assets.
Whether you need to get a quote, renew a policy, or file a claim, Cayman Insurance Center is here to protect you and your family.
For more information, call 949-4657. Cayman Insurance Center, specializing in property, life, health, motor, and other lines of insurance products and services at affordable rates.
Why work with a Sariba agent? We can tell you that those letters represent a proven understanding of the real estate market in the Cayman Islands. But it also means so much more than that. Our trained Sariba agents are committed to ethics, integrity, and excellence of practice. It's all about confidence, knowing you are working with a qualified Sariba agent. As members of Sariba, your trust is our promise. To find a Sariba agent today or to search thousands of listens, visit Sariba.com. Sariba, the mark of excellence in real estate.
Anita Khan, Business Boss. Business Boss with your host, Anita Khan.
Welcome back to the Business Buzz. Combo Money Sense. We still have Simon in the studio. He has to leave shortly. Yeah, but he's hanging on.
I'll throw a grenade in and then leave.
And OC Card is also in the studio this morning. I'm your host, Anita Khan. And we have on the line, still have on the line, Dr. Steve Macfield. Dr. Macfield?
Yes, can I make a comment?
You sure can.
Yes. Mr. Carter, I think what we need is proper education in our country. We were able to move from paper bag politics and rum politics. If you read the writings of Andrew Morris Gerard in the 50s, He clearly stated that the politics was a matter of rum. Who could buy the most rum would get elected. They moved from that to where they tie the cow at the rum bars, and they say if you vote us in, you would get the cow to butcher, and if you don't vote us in, they would put the cow back in the grass piece. We moved from those days now to refrigerator politics and washing machine politics and so forth.
White goods.
And personality politics. The politics are still very personal in Cayman. It's a personality cult. There's very lack of unity, uniformity, vision, and responsibility, and moreover loyalty to a group or a party or something. What we need to do is we need to start educating our people about the politics and how it works and what is necessary to run the country. We are lacking about that because the old merchants who controlled the system before, you had to eat from them, and if you didn't vote for them, they would not sell you anything or they wouldn't hire you on their ships. We have to overcome those things now and start educating our people as to the international modern politics of the world, and that's very lacking. And I agree with you that too often people get elected and get into ministries and they're not qualified. I agree with that. Well, I agree with that wholeheartedly. But we have to overcome that by education.
Well, at the risk of this turning into a love fest, I'm going to agree with you as well. This could be frightening. No, I think what you said there about the education is crucial. When you look in most countries around the world, we educate kids on obviously the necessities: reading, writing, arithmetic, languages, science, and all those sort of things. But we don't generally, unless you go to university and study politics, we don't educate people on the civics of the country. And when we do educate them on the civics of the country, we educate them on what that country has as opposed to what other options exist and what the pros and cons are. So we don't do a very good job of helping broaden people's minds to what options might be so that people can understand the pros and cons of those things. So that's certainly where I agree with you. Yes,
sir. So that's my take. And perhaps we can get together and start to give some of our time maybe to some educational program. We're not too old yet to do that. I don't believe.
I don't know. If you watch this on YouTube, you might look at us and go, "Well, some of us here are too old, me included."
Dr. Steve, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And you did a great job with the panel last night.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me too.
Okay, thank you. And we have another caller on the line. We have Sabrina Turner on the line. Good morning, Sabrina.
Good morning.
Look at you. Congratulations.
Good morning. Good morning,
Mr. Connor. It's just, it's a new dawn, and I want to publicly thank the Cayman Islands, the people of the Prospect Electoral District, all of my mentors, everyone is far-reaching for this opportunity. Now the work honestly begins, but words cannot express how grateful I am for this opportunity to be the voice of so many.
Well, congratulations, Sabrina. I know you're going to do a fantastic job. It's weird to hear your voice on the other side of the studio.
Yes, definitely. I intend to keep an open dialogue with the people, and definitely for all the young persons, and making it clear access and looking for a better tomorrow. People wanted change. I think the result speaks volumes. It's just now for us to get together and form a government and work with like-minded people to just take us and navigate us safely into a future that's inclusive of all and for the betterment, and it puts us on a national stage, respected as we are getting it right now.
Well, when will that process start in terms of getting together and forming a government?
Well, you know how it goes. There are a number of meetings that are coming up, and I'm quite sure I'll wait until the right time, and those like-minded persons will definitely be be letting you know in the coming days.
Has your phone been ringing off the hook from potential partners?
Yeah. I'm about to go into another call right now, but I just wanted to do this publicly. Business Buzz is my home, and publicly, thank you, prospect people.
Well, you. Sabrina, I'm sitting here thinking, well, Sabrina was a host of the Business Buzz, and here she is going into Parliament. Am I next?
As long as Sabrina, you promise to come back so we can grill you when you're in one of the ministries. And
Sabrina,
as a female, you'll be one of the few female representatives in our Parliament. How does it feel? Really, really feel? Come on, give me a hoo-hoo.
Well, I wish I had the voice for the true hoo-hoo, but it's indeed an honor to actually be put in this public forum to represent so much women, and also to definitely put us on the platform and deal with issues, but deal with them. It is mutually respected, both in all genders, but I feel that this is the time where woman empowerment, but respectfully with our male counterparts. And I'm willing and able and up to the task to definitely take us forward.
Well, Sabrina, you've got a bit of a challenge ahead of you. Cayman doesn't have a good history with respecting women, domestic abuse and such like. So I wish you well. And there are people out there who have different views, and it's a difficult subject. It's not historically been an easy place for women to exist in Cayman, and that should change. And I hope you are able to assist in that.
The females that are elected, it is time to change. We are maturing from a political standpoint, cultural standpoint. This is the time for change, but it's not going to happen overnight. And I ask for persons to just take it easy, one step at a time. And I know collectively we will get there.
Well, thank you again, Sabrina. Thanks for checking in. Congratulations once again, and we look forward to seeing what you will do for your country.
Yes, for us.
For all of us.
That's right.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to all of this. And Osi, anything to contribute to that?
Question for Simon in relation to the business community here, and whether or not he has any feel of the pulse in relation to how do they feel in relation to governments and the composition of governments, having experienced members of parliament running a government as opposed to, coming in with a relatively new slate.
Look, there's no question that competence is considered important. Right? And that's not always been the case. But it's not just governments or ministers that set the tone. Mm-hmm. There are statutory authorities that are really important, and it's the competence of statutory authorities as well. So yes, the minister in charge of whether it be commerce, finance, whatever those things are, education, whatever it might be, those are important, absolutely. But you've also then got so many underlying statutory authorities that govern in more powerful ways than politicians ever could. Yes. And not a lot of conversations ever really given to that. A lot of people keep those jobs for almost ever and ever without an awful lot of accountability. And that's something I think would be beneficial of some light being shedded into it.
Mm-hmm. And some of those boards are subject to political patronage also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do have another call on the line, OC, Simon. Mm-hmm. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Good morning. You're
still awake?
It's been an all-nighter.
Sleepless in Seattle. Good morning, folks. How are you?
Oh, we're good. How are you?
I am good, Mr. Anand. I see you weaving and all that. But you're doing it. Oh God, you're doing me proud.
Thank you.
That's all I'm saying.
She calls me Kofi Annan.
Oh, I was wondering about that.
Well, he's not alive anymore. Let's stay alive a bit longer, will you? I say, goodness me.
On the subject of domestic violence, that blows both ways for the Cayman Islands. That's what I'd like the gentleman there to know. It blows both ways, and it blows with all people. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you, caller.
Yeah.
You gentlemen want
well,
to pick up on this?
The Caribbean in general, when it comes to violence against women, we're seeing an increase in it. We're seeing places like Trinidad,
Guyana.
and Guyana,
Now Jamaica
now as well. There's a big story that's going on there with a member of parliament again, who allegedly assaulted a woman. Not only assaulted her with a stool as well. And what the video shows, if that's actually what took place, it is concerning, and those are issues that have to be addressed.
Well, yeah, it's look, this is a really difficult topic to speak transparently about, because people get upset, right? And rightly so. But it's the willingness to be open-minded to people of different persuasions, whether that be sexual persuasion, religious, whatever it might be. And historically, the Caribbean is a little bit slow to embrace modernization in that respect. The US is quite slow to embrace people of different colour. I mean, that's a sad indictment of that country. So I don't say this specifically about Cayman, but we have the leadership. It requires strong leadership, and it requires leadership both in terms of words and in action. And we haven't really seen that across the Caribbean, and particularly in Cayman. You talk about alleged assaults in certain countries. There's actual assaults happened in the Cayman Islands, and that's not a disbarable offence from running for office.
I have no comments. I do, but
we
I
need
need a job this afternoon.
There needs to be an awakening to the fact that there are many more problems that are shrugged under the carpet across all countries, which are only now. You look at the UK as an example. It's only now becoming apparent what horrors were committed in the 70s and 80s by people of power against children.
Yes,
absolute horrors. Now, we're going to pretend that none of that ever happened in Cayman? We have to be open, and we have to be willing to. You have to be willing to open up the doors to the dark places in order to truly understand what happened.
Yes.
And I do not see that yet happening in Cayman. Unfortunately, let's hope it does, because undoubtedly bad things happen, and people should be held accountable. And once they are, people will be able to live a little bit more comfortably, a little bit more confidently in their lives.
Okay, can you hold that thought, Simon? We have two callers on the line. Caller, good morning. Good morning, caller.
Hello.
Hi, good morning.
It's me again, Margaret.
How are you?
I am not well.
You're not well. Sorry to hear that.
No.
Well, hopefully we can cheer you up on the Business Buzz combo this morning.
No. This is not Business Buzz. This is Cayman Buzz.
Okay, let's hear it.
Sir, I'm just saying. Domestic violence goes both ways. Let us not chalk it all up on the Caymanian man. Domestic violence blows both ways. That's
Definitely agree with you on that one.
Yep.
That's all I'm saying. But every time I hear a public discourse, all I can hear is the man, and I take that to mean the poor Caymanian man, that he can't holler, he can't speak, he's got no friends in public domain. It is just, you're wrong again. All I'm saying is domestic violence blows both ways.
We agree with you. We definitely agree with you.
From the rooftop, just get the little facts of the case correct. Domestic violence blows both ways.
And I fully agree with you that males and females are equally capable of violence against each other. People end up in jail all the time, both of all persuasions. I think the observation that we need to be also mindful and accepting of is that the male voice has been more easily heard than the female voice over history. And that's something that is the context, I think, to why people talk about it in one way, because historically males have set political policy because they've been in power. Females haven't been, and so haven't had the opportunity to have their voices as loudly heard, despite the fact that they're, as you quite correctly say, it's not just men who are capable of horrific violence.
Yep.
Sir, as a woman, I am the mother of a male child. That's all I'm going to say. So I would have to look at domestic violence from both sides of the perspective, because my child is a male child, and I am a woman, and of course, I don't want to be battered and bruised, but neither do I want my child to be battered and bruised and don't have a place in society to see it. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, and we do hear you. We have another caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Good morning. Am I on?
Yes, you're on. You're loud and clear. How are you this morning?
Well, fine. Thank you very much. My name is Billy Simamba. I rarely call Business Buzz, but I guess today you've got a special Business Buzz, so I can call in on a general political and the elections matter.
Oh, yes. You've got it all this morning. So let's hear it.
Thanks very much, and I've been enjoying your discussion and agreeing with a lot of what you are saying and the questions you are asking, and some of the research. Like I like the example about the football stadium and so on. But what I called really to say is this: I think yesterday we had an election, and some people expected fundamental change because of the special problems that we are facing. But in the end, Cayman, I think, got small change. You see. Ossie was just talking now about the employment issue. This has never been resolved, and I don't know of any country in the world which trashes its own people like that in the employment area. Now, a lot of people have been talking about, well, you see, people in the private sector should understand that, you see, Caymanians contribute to this economy. But you are not going to preach the private sector or even the government into employing Caymanians. You are not going to be able to, they won't have like a come to Jesus moment and say, oh, we never knew that Caymanians, you see, need to be given preference. That is never going to happen. How you do it by legislation. And this government has refused to amend, for example, Regulation 6 of the immigration law to make a succession plan mandatory when you apply for a work permit. How do you expect things to change if you don't change laws like that? That is the provision, Section 28 of the Public Service Management Law. That provision says a Caymanian can be given preference if their qualifications are broadly at the same level as a foreigner. That doesn't give Caymanians any advantage. I'm not saying that they should get jobs if they don't qualify for them. But if you qualify for the job, you've got the master's degree they want, you've got the 10 years experience they want, why do you have to compete with some person from the UK who retired some time back and now is looking to find, a nice sunny place to go to? So to me, there's a lot of things I could say, but I know that time is limited. This government has sold out the people. It has not solved the beach access people issue. It has not resolved the issues of planning. It has not resolved these issues of concessions, which you rightly pointed out, and yet they have been voted back in. I think we have to ask fundamental questions in Cayman whether we still have anything that even resembles accountable government. I think I should stop there before I get too tired.
Well, sort of people have spoken, so, and that's what it is. Well, thank you so much for your input this morning.
Once people have spoken, they've spoken. Yeah.
Let me thank you for that. I think it's a really interesting perspective. Let me throw out something just to be provocative. I don't necessarily agree with this, but there's a lot of talk about you need to encourage employers to hire Caymanians. I don't necessarily agree with this, but I just wanted to put it on there. Caymanian unemployment's very low. When you look around the world at unemployment levels of indigenous populations, Caymanian unemployment is much lower than you get in other countries. So it raises the question, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but it raises the question of, are we actually trying to solve a problem that can't be solved, in the sense that there are a heck of a lot of people who are Caymanian who are employed, and often employed in actually quite well-paying jobs relative to what's going on in the rest of the world. Now, that's said to be provocative, not to say that that's necessarily let's forget about trying to promote Caymanians, but I think that it's a longer term problem than a shorter term problem. You can't solve a problem like this by saying thou must hire Caymanian. You solve the problem like this by making it attractive to hire Caymanians, because the Caymanians have got a good school system, they have the opportunity to go and get degrees, they have the opportunity for training, and you don't then introduce policies that are unfavourable towards them. You level the playing field. Whereas now, there's a good argument to say, and I brought up Enterprise City earlier. That's an unlevel playing field because you don't need to prove that a Caymanian you don't even have to hire a Caymanian there. In fact, no one really does there. I've not seen a Caymanian at Enterprise City. I mean, you'd have to crawl under the carpet to try and find one, I think, because there really aren't any. I mean, there's bound to be a couple, but there really aren't as a proportion. Why not? So we have so the caller's right that we have a very unlevel playing field, but equally, I think sometimes the obvious simple solutions are frankly too obvious and too simple, and that would be the point I'd make there. Okay.
Well, thank you, caller. It's a great discussion, but we also have 3 other callers on the line who would like to give their input. So we'd like to thank you and do have a good day. Next caller, please. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Morning.
I'm very thankful and pleasantly blessed. Can't say that I'm pleased with the outcome of the results in West Bay North.
Well, I guess you can only please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time, right, sir?
But we will get what we got in the last 4 years, nothing, and we'll continue to get nothing if we keep electing that sort of representation. And I have nothing against Bernie. I have nothing personal against him, but he is just not a representative. Someone who had not opened an office to us for 17 months and has, continued to take the people's money and hasn't opened an office. I think that's atrocious, but that's for a different conversation. And I just want to weigh in on the unemployment for Caymanians. At this juncture in our life, we should have zero unemployment in Cayman. The only unemployment we should have in Cayman is voluntary unemployment. Okay? We should not have people looking for jobs in Cayman. We have just gone through a pandemic where we have seen many of the work permit holders return to their own homeland for whatever reason. We should be upskilling our Caymanians. This election has just gone by. There was a lot of talk, a lot of rhetoric about what's going to be done for Caymanians. Well, let's see what's going to be done now. I want to see what is going to be done now for the Cayman unemployed, for Cayman in general. I believe apparently that we definitely need to work on upskilling Caymanians. Yeah. With that, I want to thank you all for the great job that you all have done in the coverage of the elections, and I'd like to thank all the election officials for a great job done. So we'll leave it at that, and you all take care. OC, you'll hear from me tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Brace yourself, OC. I think he's saying brace yourself. I'm getting angry tomorrow.
I'm glad he's saving it for tomorrow.
There's a point there. Again, I don't necessarily think I agree that 0% unemployment is feasible. It's never happened anywhere in the world in the history of the earth. So, optimistically, yes, that's true. But do you know how difficult it is to find? And I mean this genuinely. How difficult it is to find which Caymanians are looking for jobs. You tell me how you go and find someone. I hired someone not long ago, and I went on the work thing. I gave up. But it's unusable. So I then went to a couple of agencies. And I did. They were very, very good candidates. We struggled to hire someone because their candidate quality was so good. There was a good problem to have, but we don't make it easier. We're relying on the private sector to do something which should be much, much easier, and it just is difficult. So that's part of the problem. It's so difficult to find who's looking. If I'm looking for a job, I have to go to an agency, which means me as an employee, I have to pay 15% commission on that. That's a very expensive process.
Can you guys hold that thought? We have some other callers on the line. Good morning. Hello. Good morning. You're tuned to the Business Buzz. Okay, that caller is now ready, DJ Lynn.
Good morning.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Just an observation, and then probably you all could also give your opinion. It shows the power of people coming out to vote, the power of people participation. But looking at a cursory look at the results and percentages of people who voted compared to those on each respective constituency voters list, everywhere that the voter turnout was above 71.5%, and there was an incumbent, well, with one or two exceptions, but everywhere where there was about 71.5% voter turnout, and there was a newcomer and an incumbent, the newcomer caused an upset. He won. Like, for example, in East End and North Side, it was 86%. Total voter participation. It called for change. They got change. And as I said, there was a few exceptions in Prospect and as a Red Bay. There was voter turnout of actually about 71%, but and there was changes, but also like the exception being in a few cases in Georgetown and also Red Bay where the incumbent kept their seats. But I just want to find out. I mean, in total we only had 74% voter turnout, and I'm wondering how that could be increased. Whether probably we don't make it a holiday and people have to get time off from work to go and vote, which means that they were going to show up. They show up to someplace, because I think most people just stayed in and slept or went to the beach or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just shows the power of voter participation. When people want change, they got change, and it's a sad case that in West Bay West they didn't seem to want change, even though they're going to have they've casted a wasted vote for 4 years. That's my contribution this morning.
Thank you so much, sir. Anything else? You sure that's it?
That's it. Just a wasted vote for West Bay West. That's all I got to say.
I think the thing I would take away from that, and OC I think might be a good person to comment on this, is the need for a public holiday to vote. Because a lot of other countries are achieving the exact same turnout in much more difficult circumstances to vote, because you have to drive through much worse traffic and all sorts of stuff, and yet they don't have public holidays. Do we need that? Do we need that in Cayman? Does it?
I think we're likely to see a lower turnout if it weren't a public holiday. You're going to get a lot of bantering between employer and employee about the time to be allowed to be able to vote. I believe we need to make voting still, even as easy as it is, we may need to make it even easier, more
digitalize.
Yeah, that could be part of it, and more advanced voting rather than waiting until election day. Open up early voting to everyone who wants to vote, especially if we, in 4 years' time, and I'm hoping that we don't have a pandemic then.
People will be traveling.
Yes, people will be traveling, everything. Open it up early and allow other people to vote at any point in time. I think you're likely to see an increase there. The level of debate that we're seeing, the quality of the candidates who are presenting themselves, for election, and maybe we need to look at possibly having a national vote as well. That may go along with my suggestion in terms of the increase in the membership of Parliament, and you have at-large voting. One of the obstacles that we have in the Cayman Islands is people are so resistant to change. It took us so long, and we can look at some of the things to get to elect or to choose a speaker from outside of the Legislative Assembly. It took us years to get that done. We're still getting opposition to one person, one vote and single-member constituencies. If we were to introduce at-large voting, where you may want to have 3, 4, half dozen at-large seats, where those candidates are voted by the whole population as opposed to one constituency, we have to stop looking at our representatives as just representing those 300 voters that may have gotten them past the finish line, and think of them as national politicians, because the issues that the Cayman Islands have to face need everyone to address them, not necessarily just those who are members of the cabinet.
Yeah, you're saying it's too tribal in some respects.
I wouldn't use that word.
Okay, let me take out the bell from there just right now. If you're listening to us, this is a combination of the Business Buzz and Money Sense. And thanks so much for calling this morning. I'm learning a whole lot, OC and Simon, learning from you guys. We've got to take a break, but before we go to break, we've got a WhatsApp message. Ooh. It says, "Good. I'm reading as is. Good morning to you and your guests at the Business Buzz. I'm just wondering, as a voting citizen, why are we not hearing from our politicians about the concerns that continue to affect our youth and country as a whole? I've only heard from one politician so far on bullying, which affects learning. I haven't heard any politician with focus on solutions on the eradication of illegal drugs, substance abuse, domestic abuse, or drinking and driving. To add to that, we also have government departments tending cheap labor, replacing our hard-working civil servants with companies that pay their staff as low as $6 an hour, increasing the poverty, the demand for more unnecessary work permits, and a decrease in jobs and opportunities for Caymanians." Any comments?
Sounds like a manifesto.
Yeah. My question would be, the writer of that, did that person vote? I can ask them. Venture to ask who they voted for, but did they get out there and vote? Since none of these issues seem to have been addressed that they're detailing.
This comes to a point that you were making, I think, OC, about the lack of opportunity for policy to be discussed and debated because of the composition, the quantum of the how the Parliament is set up. There's 8 cabinet members.
Yes.
There are 19 people minus a speaker, so 8 out of 18 are in a cabinet. So how does policy get debated, discussed, and improved?
Yeah, there's a hindrance there to all of that happening. Yeah, you have to increase the membership. Increase the membership. And we have to stop looking at politics and politicians, being a politician, as a career or as a means of that person supporting themselves and their families. They're doing it for the public good. They're doing their civic duty. Yeah. If you can't afford to do that, then you shouldn't get involved in politics. But you shouldn't be there because it attracts a good salary. Hence the reason for reducing the salary of it. What we've actually seen is that they basically have increased it. They have given themselves these perks now where, if you're not elected, you still get paid for, what is it, something like 3 months after? Ridiculous.
So I actually have absolutely no problem with that. I think salaries for politicians almost around the world should be 50% higher than they are or more. And I look at Singapore as a model where you have you attract people who otherwise wouldn't do it because human nature is greed. So yeah, I'd love to do my civic duty, but not if it means I give up $500,000 a year. That would be the attitude a lot of people have. But I might do it if I only have to give up $250,000 a year. So, and yeah, you might say, well, we don't want that sort of person, but maybe you do want that sort of person because they are going to be more productive, more output generated in a Singapore sort of way. So I take a different view, but I totally understand where you're coming from on that.
Okay.
But it's you two for the rest of the show. I'm out of here now.
I think it's time for a break. No, you're not allowed to leave yet, Simon. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion this morning. Tell you what, we're going up to 10 o'clock. Never done that in the Business Buzz. I'm always begging for a minute or a minute and a half after 9. So, DJ Lynn, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll go straight up to 10. Is that it? Yes, sir.
We are telling you ahead of time, giving you the heads up to get ready. The Black Tie Affair with a circus twist. Step right up. The annual gala hosted by Rotary Central for the Alex Panton Foundation. Saturday, May 29th, Marriott Beach Hotel Ballroom. Step right up. Support the Alex Panton Foundation, dedicated to serving and preserving young people through vulnerable times. Mental health intervention, treatment, guidance, preserving life. The ambience of a circus affair. Tickets are limited, tickets are precious. Get your tickets from Rotary Central members. Go online to Rotary Central and the Alex Panton Foundation Facebook pages. Rotary Central and the Alex Panton Foundation. Rotary opens opportunity.
Work Jobs Cayman has a new look. Registered users can now experience a more user-friendly platform, allowing for easier registration and posting of job ads. To see and experience the new look today, visit www.work.ky. That's WORC.ky.
Gran, it was good to see you, but we've got to get home.
Yep, we've got to let the dog out.
Speaking of dogs, you won't believe who I saw the other day.
Who?
Honey.
Remember Anton, Jeanette's oldest boy? The one with the dogs, you know.
With local claims managers, we pay your motor claims fast. We're like a goodbye at your granny's that doesn't take 30 minutes.
Anton can't pass up one of my kids.
Will you look at that? We really got to get going.
So soon?
CG Britke. Insurance, health, pensions, life. Good like that. Radio Cayman brings you For the Health of It live with Tara Bush on Wednesday at 7 p.m. And if you miss it, you can tune in for the rebroadcast on Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. Chlorodo Bleach is proud to sponsor For the Health of It. Mildew, no problem. Stains, no problem. Whites, no problem. Sanitary cleaning, no problem. Chlorodo Bleach has got you covered. For the ultimate clean, use Chlorodo Bleach. Available at Foster's Food Fair, 2 liters and 1 gallon sizes. Pick up your bottle today.
The ultimate clean is a Chlorodo Clean.
Radio Cayman Super Jam Show, the #1 drive time entertainment show on your radio. Enjoy a mix of pop, hip-hop, dancehall, urban gospel. The Super Jam Show is
brought to you by these kind sponsors.
The Cayman Islands Football Association, SIFA, building a better future for Cayman football.
Cayman Insurance Center. Don't take chances with your family's future.
The University of the West Indies Open Campus.
Find your place in the Cayman Dream today. The UWI Open Campus, on-site, online, and on demand.
Visit open.uwi.edu. Call them today at 946-8322. Train with Dre. Train with Dre's lunch weight loss program. Get your meals right and lose weight today. No excuses, no gimmicks. Call Dre today at 928-3420.
The Super Jam on Radio Cayman.
Blue Marlin Restaurant. Takeout on Eastern Avenue. Delivery and catering.
Food is awesome.
Call 947-4752 to place your order.
The #1 drive time entertainment show on your radio.
Business Boss. Business Boss with your host, Anita Khan.
Welcome back to what is now solely the business buzz, because Simon has left the building. And so it's just myself and Mr. O.C. Connor. O.C., thank you for staying with me. Otherwise, I'll be talking to myself. And I know the listeners love to call when you're here and just have that great conversation with you. But we have a caller on the line. Good morning, caller. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, OC, this is, you know who it is, Brother Benjamin.
Yes.
Yeah, quickly, I'm just hoping and praying that we get a government this time around that's going to do some things I want to see done. That's like, introduce a categorized minimum wage. That's what we need here. I've been talking about that for years, and Jude Scott ran for election years ago, and he campaigned on that. Jude is an accountant. I voted for Jude for that. And up till now, he's still not got it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Decriminalize marijuana. So these children that went to prison for 1 slip or 2 slips in the conviction can find a job. We need jobs for our children to pay their rent and get them out of your house. You can't get your kids out of your house no more because they can't make enough, to survive. In my day, in the 70s, I held 2 jobs, making probably $350 a month, but I survived because the cost, I remember renting an apartment for $50 a month them days. We need some seniors here to help out, get these people to working in all these work permission stuff. We need to get our people educated and get them on jobs, well-paying jobs. It's time for that. And the importation of cars and all this rapid development is not going to be very nice for stay-over tourism if it ever comes back. You imagine if this year tourist season, if we had a booming tourist season, where would we be able to drive? It wouldn't have been anybody to drive. You know that, I know that, everybody knows it. The traffic was just bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we are sitting on 50,000 acres of land, just barely sticking out of the Caribbean Sea,
And what worries me more than anything else is a nasty earthquake. We could submerge into it in a second. I remember in the 80s, and also you might remember this too, because you immigration in the 80s, when I was in the force. And I remember a man from England came down here one time, and some people studied the 10,000-foot drop-off off 7 Mile Beach. They said under that, there's a shelf with a stem hole in it. And a man came on the radio, and he talked about it more, and he warned us, stop putting all this heavy concrete building on 7 Mile Beach. Because if it breaks, that's it. And I live in West Bay. I can soon start sleeping in a kayak.
Thank you so much, sir, for your call this morning. We have another caller on the line. Good morning, sir. Oh, good morning.
Hello, good morning. Hello,
good morning. How are you?
Am I on? Good. Thank you, famous speaker Rambo here.
Good morning, Mr. Rambo.
Yeah, good. All I seen the election, it was swiftly and smooth in a different aspect of way. What you call about this morning now, right? The decriminalization of herbs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That needs to be amended right away. Not I would like to see. Right, for decades, they've been watered down and diluted. So that would be right away, like from right away, urgently. Because the world recognize that of that is still used, and the world recognize that as a necessity, especially WHO, right? The abbreviation, World Health Organization. Okay. So that's about this morning.
Okay, so thank you so much for your input. Have a wonderful day today. Thank you. And that's, I think that's our calls this morning. Or if we still have time, we could take a few more calls. But we'll see. I know it's just the two of us. Simon pulled all the heavyweight this morning, so I could sit back, listen, and enjoy. So now he's gone. Let's see what. Most times after an election, a lot of people don't get a chance to check up on those results and follow up on what's going on. So I've got the results. Can I just run them through?
Sure. That's a good idea. Yes, yeah.
So let's start with West Bay North. We had Ralston Anglin and Bernie Bush. Ralston had 429 votes and Bernie 515. West Bay West, Mr. McKeever Bush. Mr. McKeever had 458 and Mario Ebanks 431. Very close.
Very.
West Bay Central, we had Captain Eugene Ebanks came in at 392 and Catherine Ebanks Wilkes 539. West Bay South, Andre Martin Ebanks. Andre had 796 votes and Raul Nicholas Co. Raul had 309.
Nicholson Co,
sorry. And Georgetown North, we had Joey Hugh, Joseph Hugh. I call him Joey, came in at 512 votes, and Renard Johan Muxam, Johan had 395. For Georgetown West, Paulina McGaw Lumsden, Paulina had 198, Elio Solomon, 135, Dr. Kenrick Webster, he had 98, and Mr. David White, David came in at 457. And continue on into Georgetown Central, Kenneth Bryan. Kenneth had 851 and Mr. Frank Cornwall 126. Georgetown South, Miss Barbara Connolly. Barbara had 524 and Mr. Alric Lindsay at 470. And those were the last votes that were tallied last night.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Yeah, they finished up all the excitement. Georgetown East, Richard Bernard. Richard had 7. Emily Deku. Emily had 217. Not too bad for a first-timer. Christina Hislop Rollinson. Christina had 76. Dr. Frank McField had 61. And Mr. Roy McTaggart, 645. Moving into West Bay, Samuel Jackson, or Sammy we call him, 425. And Mr. Alden McLaughlin, 535.
That was Red Bay, right? Red Bay?
That's Red Bay, correct. Yep. Sammy 425, Mr. Alden 535. And in Prospect, Austin Harris Jr. Austin had 288, Michael Miles 307, and Miss Sabrina Turner 353. In Savannah, Heather Barden, fondly known as Yaya, 577. Mr. Malcolm Eden 442. And Jenna Williams at 28. In Newlands, we had 4 candidates. Mr. Roydell Carter, 29. Raul Gonzalez Jr., he had 156. Gurney Wayne Panton, at 6:55, and Mr. Alvis Suku at 3:46. Moving down into West Bay West. Bontown West. Bontown West. Mr. Vincent Frederick, he had 239. And Christopher Saunders, 902. Bontown East, we saw Ozzy Bodden, 472. Dwayne Seymour, Mr. John, we call him, 735. And moving into North Side, they had some upsets out in North Side. Deborah Broderick, Deborah had 23 votes. Johanny, or they call him Jay had 394. Justin Ebanks, 84. And Mr. Ezra Miller, 217. In East End, McCleary Frederick, he came in at 15 votes. Mr. Ard McLean, 304. And Isaac Rankin at 348. Moving over to the Sister Islands, Cayman Brac West and Little Cayman. Moses Kirkconnell, he had 315. That's 315. Maxine McCoy Moore, 52. And the last, but certainly not least, Cayman Brac East, Mrs. Connolly O'Connor, 266, and Mr. Elvis McKeever, 107. So, OC?
Well, unfortunately, the Cayman Islands, after the elections and after the results, we're going to go through a period, whether or not that be long or whether it be short, but there will be a period of uncertainty as to the government, the face of the government that we will see. Hence, again, my position in relation to nothing wrong with having independent candidates, but we really need to see the emergence of more than one political party in the Cayman Islands. We need more certainty. We spoke earlier about corruption. The doors of corruption are not only open when candidates are seeking to be elected and they're out there trying to get the vote or buy the vote of the voter. The system now, in terms of the formation of a government, is open to corruption as well, to promises and things being offered to successful candidates to join up with others to form the government. We need to get rid of that. We still do not need the uncertainty that we have. I already see WhatsApp messages going around. Independents have 11 seats. They can form the government, and suggestions as to who's going to be a minister, who's going to be the premier. We do not need that uncertainty in the Cayman Islands. Those are the things that need to be corrected.
All right. So I want to ask you a final question, Osi, before we head out of the Business Buzz this morning. You're a male, and I am a female, and I want to hear this from a male perspective. Why aren't more women running for public office? Your thoughts?
We have been living in a male-dominated society for a long time. We have not gotten past that yet. The inroads that are being made, they're small increments, but I think we will get there eventually. We just need to continue to encourage more women, and we need to continue to show more respect for our women and their abilities as well. I believe if you look in the Cayman Islands, I'm not sure what the statistics are, but I would venture to say that we probably have more college-educated women than we have men in the Cayman Islands. At a professional level, there are probably more women as well. And there's no reason why we should not have more women as representatives in our parliament. Like I said, small inroads are being made. Hopefully, we have 4 now. Hopefully, in the next 4 years, we will see that increase. If it could be double, that would be great. We have to continue to encourage our female members to be involved and support them, when they are involved.
Any final thoughts before we head out for the buzz this morning? We've had a long time, so...
Well, again, I'd really like to congratulate the Supervisor of Elections and his staff for the sterling job that they did. I want to congratulate the voters for doing their part and getting out there and participating as well. It's a little bit disappointing that we're seeing in some areas the percentage of persons voting dropping somewhat. I expected it actually to be higher with the more involvement of social media and everything else, but we need to look beyond the quantity of social media and look more at the quality. People need to discuss things in a mature, rational manner and need to be addressed and discussed seriously as well. And I believe that in this particular case, rather than social media being a plus for voter turnout, it may have turn the opposite way.
Mm-hmm. OC, it's a pleasure to be sitting next to such greatness this morning. Never thought we'll team up like this, but it's just interesting, your input, and also Simon. I want to say a big thank you to Simon for sharing his money sense with the Business Buzz this morning. OC, I know you're on tomorrow morning. You'll have another whooping morning. And I want to say thank you again. Thanks
for having me.
You're very welcome. Thanks to our producer, Miss Susan Watson, for putting all this stuff together.
Yes.
Susan, you're just home relaxing, and we want to say thank you. We appreciate all the hard work that you do for the Business Buzz. DJ Lynn, thank you for holding it down. To all our listeners and our viewers on YouTube viewers this morning, thank you so much. And for our callers, thanks for your contribution to the Business Buzz and Money Sense. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day.
The Business Buzz is proudly sponsored by Cayman Medical Supplies. Call them at 949-6211. Cayman Insurance Center, celebrating 45 years in the Cayman Islands, specializing in property, life, and other lines of insurance products and services. And Digicel Business. Get everything your business needs in one package with Digicel Business Hub.
Satisfaction is guaranteed 24 hours a day, whether it's music or information.
From Grand Cayman to Cayman Brac to Little Cayman, we've got you covered.
You ever hear a thing like that?
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice.
It is in the best interest of the people of these islands.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce congratulates the new elected members of Parliament. The council and staff say they look forward to working with them in the years ahead to address, quote, the many challenges and issues that are facing the Cayman Islands. France has urged all its citizens in Pakistan to leave the country temporarily amid violent anti-French protests across the country. The country's embassy in Pakistan warned of, quote, serious threats to French interests in the country, saying protests were increasing nationwide. 2 police officers died this week in renewed clashes with protesters. The protests were sparked months ago after France defended the right to show cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. And a Canadian politician has apologized after appearing naked in a video call with colleagues. William Amos, who represents the Quebec district of Pontiac, said in a statement on Wednesday, quote, this was an unfortunate error. My video was accidentally turned on while I was changing into my work clothes after going for a jog. A screenshot of the incident posted on social media shows Mr. Amos holding a mobile phone over his private parts. Those are your headlines. I'm Kersley Fuller.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
RC Fusion.
Brought to you by
TC Paint Shop.
The TC Paint Shop is the authorized dealer for Sherwin-Williams in the Cayman Islands. 943-0565, 27 Godfrey Nixon Way. We are so looking forward to serving you soon.
RC Fusion. RC Fusion.
The Georgetown Farmers Market. It's time you start eating local. The market at the Cricket Grounds. Proudly Caymanian and 100% fresh.
RC Fusion. RC Fusion.
Also brought to you by Green Clean Home Care Services, serving you the eco-clean way. Visit greencleancayman.com or book your appointment by calling 936-2427.
Modern vampires of the city.
coulda come from Rima or you come from jungle. Coulda come from Firehouse or you come from Tower Hill. One blood, one blood, one blood. You coulda come from Libya or you come from America. Coulda come from Europe or you come from Africa. One blood, one blood, one blood. You coulda be a Irishman or a Englishman. Coulda be a Mexican or a with a Indian. One blood, one blood, one blood. Hey mate, boy, I want you get me straight. Cooperate, hey, hey mate, hey mate, I want you get me straight. Hey come, do you believe in love, love, love? Hey blow, this is no joke. You coulda be a soldier man or a weather policeman or a weather civilian. Said the whole of we are one blood, one blood, one blood. You coulda come from London or you come from Birmingham. Coulda come from Brooklyn or you come from Boston. One blood, one blood, one blood. The fussing and fighting, travel war, racial war, cause blood, blood. Mothers fighting daughters every day. Fathers fighting sons, sisters hating sisters, brothers killing brothers every day. You coulda come from Rima or you come from jungle. Coulda come from Firehouse or you come from Tower Hill. One blood, one blood, one blood. You coulda come from Compound or you come from out of town. Coulda come from Manhattan or you come from round town. One blood, one blood, one blood. You coulda be a black man or a with a white man. Coulda be a Mexican or a with a Pakistan. One blood, one blood, one blood. You coulda come from Lebanon or you come from Iran. Coulda come from China or you come from Japan. One blood, one blood, one blood. You coulda be a Bobo Jet or a Ayabingi or a with a Orthodox or a with a dreadlocks. One blood, one blood, one blood. You coulda be a Catholic or a with a Anglican. Coulda be a Church of God or a with a Verdian. One blood.
Under 17, now you're over 16. Under 17, now you're over 16. I beg you rock and come in. Because I one general in the yard. I one general in the yard. Arlene, I must dream you the dream. Arlene, I must dream you the dream. Because me went on a housing scheme. Fiwa, fi go check out the girl Arlene.